Welcome back to another in our series of the great chapters in the Bible. Our chapter today comes from Paul's second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 9, Giving, beginning in verse 1. Now it is superfluous for me to write to you about the ministry for the saints, for I know your readiness, of which I boast about to the people of Macedonia, saying that Achaia has been ready since last year, and your zeal has stirred up most of them. But I am sending the brothers so that our boasting about you may not prove empty in this matter, so that you may be ready, as I said you would be. Otherwise, if some Macedonians come with me and find that you are not ready, we would be humiliated, to say nothing of you, for being so confident. So I thought it necessary to urge the brothers to go on ahead to you and arrange in advance for the gift you have promised, so that it may be ready as a willing gift, not as an exaction. The point is this: whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. Each one must give as he has decided in his heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that, having all sufficiency in all things at all times, you may abound in every good work. As it is written, He has distributed freely, He has given to the poor, His righteousness endures forever. He who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food will supply and multiply your seed for sowing and increase the harvest of your righteousness. You will be enriched in every way to be generous in every way, which through us will produce thanksgiving to God. For the ministry of this service is not only supplying the needs of the saints, but is also overflowing in many thanksgivings to God. By their approval of this service, they will glorify God because of your submission that comes from your confession of the gospel of Christ, and the generosity of your contribution for them and for all others, while they long for you and pray for you, because of the surpassing grace of God upon you. Thanks be to God for this inexpressible gift. As I sit here and ponder the words that will follow, it is the season of summer. The longest daylight day of the year has come and gone recently, and the slow but inevitable descent into winter begins. And in a few months, the shortest daylight day of the year will be upon us. So it goes with the ebb and flow of the sun's trek, or rather, our planet's trek around the sun. In the moment, it is difficult to comprehend the turning of the seasons. Yet my garden knows it. Not only the vegetables I have planted, but the flowers as well. I am already regretting that I did not plant more flowers, so that when they bloom, I will gaze at their exquisite beauty in abundance. But I was stingy with the seed and my time and effort to put them in. So also with my vegetables. Just a couple more squash plants is all I need. Oh, and it would have been nice to have a pumpkin or two as well. But it is past the time for planting, and every good sower knows the time for sowing and when it is past. And when it is past, it is gone for the season. It is such a small thing to sow those little seeds, and the abundant harvest of many times what was planted is an amazing concept to grasp. A few years ago, a man related to me the ratio of verses in the Bible that spoke, in their essence, the idea of giving. It seems that the ratio was 1 in 6 verses spoke on some level about giving. Now, don't get trapped into thinking it's all about giving money. You'll miss the concept if you do. Have you thought about those verses of what God has given to us? How about those who gave their lives? Those who give help, like the Good Samaritan? Those who give of their time? So you see, there are many types of giving, and more than just what I've listed. But these are good enough to show that we need to think outside the box of just giving money. However, the context of our passage today here in Corinthian letter is the collection of the money that was promised beforehand. We have to go back to the previous chapter to discover that what we are collecting is for the relief of the poor. Paul references the efforts of the Macedonian churches here in chapter 8 and verses 3 through 6. For they gave according to their means, as I can testify, and beyond their means of their own accord, begging us earnestly for the favor of taking part in the relief of the saints. And this, not as we expected, but they gave themselves first to the Lord, and then, by the will of God, to us. Accordingly, we urged Titus that, as he had started, so he should complete among you this act of grace. The verses leading to this collection are these in chapter 8 and verses 22 through 24. And with them we are sending our brother, to whom we have often tested and found earnest in many matters, but who is now more earnest than ever because of his great confidence in you. As for Titus, he is my partner and fellow worker for your benefit. And as for our brothers, they are messengers of the churches, the glory of Christ. So give proof before the churches of your love and of our boasting about you to these men. Paul continues with this urging to complete their giving in our chapter in verse 1 through 5. Then he begins to show the principle behind the act of giving, a much bigger principle that will readily be apparent to them when he lays it out. I'm convinced that if we could truly grasp this principle of sowing and reaping as it pertains to our giving, we would be so overwhelmed by the reward that we would wonder why no one ever revealed it to us before. Turns out, we've seen this all around us our whole lives. We just didn't realize it. Paul reveals it when he says in verse 6, "The point is this, whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows bountifully will also reap bountifully." Every farmer who plants in his fields, every gardener who sows in their plots knows this. The more you plant, the bigger the harvest. If they are stingy with the seed, they will find a meager harvest. They don't need to test this rule every year. They know it already. Paul then makes the leap to the spiritual application and tells them and us this universal principle, or law, if you will. First, giving must be what has been decided in the heart, not what the person is forced to do. God wants us to give. But God really, and I mean really, loves a cheerful giver. I've seen no better example of this than what I witnessed nearly 20 years ago. I happened to be at the front of the auditorium of the assembly as I watched the baskets for the contribution being passed around. And when one of the baskets came to two young twin girls, they each dropped their coins in the basket and turned to each other and gave a high five. They were more than cheerful. They were ecstatic and showed it right there. I don't know if we have to high five each other each time we give, but we ought to be happy at the very least. What Paul explains here in the rest of the chapter is the stuff that anthropologists and researchers study to this day. This idea of giving and it will be given back to you is more than a social construct. That is something we have determined as a reality based on our behavior. This is the law that God has instituted. For Paul writes in 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 8 through 9, "And God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that having all sufficiency in all things at all times, you may abound in every good work. As it is written, He has distributed freely. He has given to the poor. His righteousness endures forever." As Paul concludes this chapter, he makes a statement of astounding magnitude, and one that cannot be truly expressed or grasped. For he says, "Thanks be to God for His inexpressible gift." What gift? It certainly isn't the reward that we have given. It is the gift of grace through the gospel. It is the result of God's love for us when He gave His Son, His only Son, that we might have eternal life. Now, whatever I plant here on earth, whether seeds in my garden or money to the Lord, I can, in one way or another, calculate this. When it comes to trying to calculate the return on investment, the gift God gave to us in the form of His Son, it truly is inexpressible. I suppose, as the old hymn expresses, "Not till then shall I know just how much I truly owe." How about we read this chapter again and ask ourselves the tough question about how much we are giving? Would you be satisfied with that amount? And Lord willing, let's meet here again tomorrow and look at another of the great chapters in the Bible.